All right, so welcome everyone to our first ever virtual episode of Your Creepiest Corner. And today we have the lovely
Rami Kahlon
in to talk about her experiences both acting in and writing and directing horror. Now, there's actually quite a few horror pieces in your back catalog as an actor, as like me, you come from an acting background as well. Figure we might as well we'll start just talking about your filmography of acting, and then we'll get into your directing. Does that make sense?
Sounds great.
Okay. So first off, The Dorm. What was that about?
Oh, that was great. I think that was the first horror film that I'd ever done. And it was an MTV horror. So it was kind of horror, but really sexy at the same time. And it was about the peaks, or wanting to be the peak of a high school student, but sacrificing friendship, love, being a nice person for all of that. So it was one of those classic horror films where the mean girl kills someone to become the epitome of perfection. I would say that's a spoiler, but this film's like 7 years old at this point, so no worries on that. And my character was one of like I think it was Heather, I'm pretty sure it was Heather, who was really talkative, pretending to be nice in your face, but then at the same time trying to be the person that kills this new girl to serve my master. It was very culty. It was really cool.
Now, of course, you seem to have been in the classic Vancouver series, Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
How was your experience on set for that?
You know, I actually grew up watching Supernatural, so my experience was that I wasn't even acting. I was fangirling the whole time. I didn't get to work with Jared Padalecki or Jensen Ackles, but what's his name? Castiel was there. And the whole time I'm supposed to be acting opposite him. And I'm just like, I'm internally freaking out. And after I'm like, I'm such a big fan of the show. I love everything about you. And we got some cool photos together. But it was great. It was really hard to focus. But Supernatural has actually been such an inspiration for the films that I make, because every episode they have a different demon or a different ghost, and they always do so much research on it. And I find that it's nice to draw inspiration from it.
Yeah, there's definitely like when there's Monster of the Week, that's just a font of crazy ideas you could take a different way.
Yeah.
Now, was Dead Inside a pilot?
Dead Inside was a pilot. That was the CW pilot. It was really cool. And it was about, I believe the lead girl's brother dies.
Mm-hmm.
And so he comes back as a ghost. And it's kind of a play on words, because she's dead inside in the eyes because she can't live without her brother, but he also is dead. So it was a horror comedy, but it was a pilot and it didn't get picked up.
You win some, you lose some. Yeah. And then you've also been on Van Helsing.
That was the coolest thing ever. I was a vampire.
You're a vampire. That's awesome.
I was a vampire, and it was so cool because the director called me the week before and told me that the direction that they're going with the show is more video gamey. So I really based my vampire based on like video game vampires, without not trying to find truth as much as finding like what's some cool physicalities I can do with this character. And I think it went really well. I was like the assistant to the main vampire. So I was like guiding the army and everything, and I got to do like this really cool voice the whole time. It was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Were there any like video games specifically that you looked into for the role?
There's a movie based on a video game that I watched a lot because I thought it was such a good inspiration. I can't remember exactly, but it's Angelina Jolie and James McAvoy.
I want to say Wanted.
That's it. Yeah, so Wanted was probably my biggest inspiration when it came to that.
And then Decomposing is I believe short film you were on.
That's a sick one. It just came out this year, and I believe it's having its festival run. The first one, I think it's in Palm Springs. which is so exciting. I might go depending on what's going on with COVID, but that's a really cool one. It's about a dead body that is decomposing, but at the same time, there's four friends that find it, and their friendship is decomposing at the same time. So once again, a play on words. And it's great because it's a horror comedy. So there's this drama happening with the girls, but at the same time, there's a dead body decomposing at the same time. It's really strange, and my character is really cool because I play the girl that's like just high on mushrooms the whole time and is like saying the most inappropriate things throughout it. Which is really, and then being the person that's like, hey, I'm not starting anything, I'm not doing any drama. But you know, that person that like probably should just keep her mouth shut because she's not contributing. Yeah, it's a good role.
And then there's also Just Another Ghost Story.
That one was great because I got to collaborate with the director on what I wanted. So it was for a festival, it was for Run and Gun in 2021, and pretty much director was like, does anyone want to do this? And I was like, yeah, me. And we had a sit down conversation about what I wanted, and I was just like, you know what, I've really been watching The Only Way is Essex, and I want to play an Essex girl, and I want like some fun comedic banter. And he was like, sure, and he just wrote me a part based on that. And so I'm a real estate agent from Essex that's died from falling in the pool in this like crazy way. I fell in the pool and I suffocated and died. And I have no idea that I'm dead. So this person comes to the house and I'm like showing the house and she's trying to let me know that I've passed away, but it's great because I get to speak in this beautiful accent, and have the humanity of someone that has to move on to the afterlife but doesn't want to accept it. So it's a really nice genre mixing of comedy, fantasy, horror, like it's crazy.
Yeah, and now has this episode come out yet, or is this still waiting for it to premiere? For Two Sentence Horror Story.
That I can't say anything about because that is still going to premiere. Not next week. I believe it's January 23rd that my episode comes out.
Okay, so if you're watching this before January 23rd, mark your calendars for Two Sentence Horror Story so we can find out what that horror story is. Now, you mentioned that a lot of the films that you have done are like horror comedies. So is there something about that part of the genre that speaks to you specifically?
It's my favorite genre of all time. I always want to watch a horror comedy. I saw this beautiful one. I shout it out all the time, but Witness Infection. I don't know if you've seen it. It made the independent rounds.
Okay.
It's so funny. It's about like zombies, but at the same time, like there's like jokes every now and then. And I think I just like horror comedy because I feel like it's the genre that's more relevant to the way that my life is. Like there's always dark humor in every situation. I don't know, I just personally find it more relatable than anything else. Like I'm never fully dramatic and I'm never fully funny. Like there's always a balance with me, and I find that horror comedy really highlights that the best.
Now let's start talking about your directorial debut, Odd Girl.
Mm-hmm.
How was your experience switching from in front of to behind the camera?
It was hard. It was really hard. When you're behind the camera or when you're in front of the camera, there's a lot less responsibility. You just have your character and your part and you do your best, and then everyone else kind of strings it together, the director, the editor. But then when I was the director, there were so many times where I'm like, oh, right, that's my responsibility. Like, oh, I need to know like all of the characters' objectives. I need to know what each character wants. Whereas like if you're just acting, you kind of just focus on yourself. So it was really difficult. And I watched like more than 100 YouTube videos on how to direct. And it was so helpful, like because I never went to film school really. But I had a lot of motivation and I wanted to do really well. And I pretty much just looked at every single YouTube video that I could find and did all of the homework that it suggested.
Did you have like anyone who you were able to talk through it to get like some mentorship or anything?
And not in a directing way, but I do think that I was able to get a lot of help with my team. Um, like the DP, especially Farhad Gaderi, like whenever I had any questions about the technical aspect or anything, he was definitely there for me. Also, the sound recordist Alex Shamku as well. Like if there was something specific to their department that I didn't know, they were really close friends of mine that I felt like I could just be completely honest about and not have to pretend like I know everything, which I don't. It was my first time. And from the get-go, I was like, listen, I have this idea, I've got a vision, but I've never directed a film, and you're gonna have to be patient with me. And they were both super cool about it.
Now, you also wrote the film, correct?
Yes.
So, what was your inspiration for the story?
Um, my friend's a writer, David Lee. He's a poetry writer, and he had found this competition, this horror competition, and pretty much suggested I do it. And we didn't. I hadn't really written a screenplay before then, and we couldn't think of anything. And the only thing that we had in common was that we went to high school together. So so that's pretty much the base of where it all started, and the rest was like the main two characters are based on me and my friend, but the rest is kind of all just made up. And pretty much just from watching a bunch of horror films over and over and over again, that I just came up with like a story of the week that Supernatural kind of does. And then from there, I didn't want it to just be like another horror film. So I really got into like the depth of why the characters are the way they are, not just like, oh, she's a ghost and that's super cool. It's like, why is she a ghost? Why is she so sad? Why is she depressed? And we really got into like the meat of it. And I think that's what kind of sets Odd Girl aside as a like a high school film, because it's not just like a fun dumb high school film. Like there's truth to the fact that Belinda is depressed. Yeah.
Like, I'm curious to know like what horror movies specifically you watched over and over again, just because when I saw the film, I really got almost like a J horror vibe from the plot, since like it just had like sort of that continuing curse feel like a lot of J horror brings to the table.
Yeah, I'm definitely inspired by a lot of that, J horror and K horror as well. Especially I can't watch it. It scares me so much. I would definitely say that's the basis of the inspiration, because there's always this element of anticipation. It never
Mhm.
drops. Like you never get relief with J horror, or you never do. And that's what scares me so much that I wanted to put it in the film.
And is the film still doing the festival circuit, or is there somewhere people can watch it?
It's all done now. You can watch it on YouTube actually. If you search up Odd Girl, ODD space GIRL, it should be the first thing that comes up.
I'll put a link to it in the description for this video, so be sure to check the description for a link to Odd Girl.
I just wanted to say one more thing about the film.
Yeah.
I got an email about it today too, but I think one of the coolest things that happened with this film is that we've partnered with a Japanese distributor. So so the film's actually being translated, or has been translated in a bunch of different languages, in Japanese, in Malay, I believe, as well. And that's on this website called Samansa. If you Instagram Samansa, or I can maybe try to send you that website as well, and people can look at it. It's a really cool initiative that this Japanese startup is doing to introduce films made here to an Eastern audience.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially there's been kind of a Southeast Asian renaissance in horror. If you go on Shudder, there's like a lot of Indonesian films and like films from parts of the world that haven't necessarily gotten to get a wider audience or really starting to make an impact.
Because there's so much amazing talent outside of North America. that we don't really get to see, and then it's the opposite too, right? So it's cool.
What would you say is your favorite horror film?
Oh, such a hard question. My favorite horror film. My favorite horror film. I've got some favorites. I don't know if I have a favorite, but okay. This film messed me up for life, and I don't think that I wouldn't even call it a favorite horror film because I low-key hate how much it messed me up. But there's this Indian film called Raz, Raaz, which translates to secret. And it's like the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's Bollywood, so they have songs, and these songs are supposed to be fun and hopeful and whatnot, but they do a play on words. So they have words that mean peace, like Shanti, but then they turn it into like a horror themed song, and it messed me up. I was like 8 when I saw it. So that one, Chucky is also one of the classics. I love watching that one. It scares me every single time because of that film. I never could trust my dolls fully. And then also Dale and Tucker versus Evil is a really good one.
That's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, it was shot here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Is there anything coming up in the next month or so that you think people should know all about, that you're allowed to talk about?
Monday, February 7th, I am doing a staged reading at Deer Lake Park. There's a theater there, and it's called The Bibliomancer. And I don't think I can say too much about it, but it is like a fantasy / kids horror type thing.
Ooh.
And it's very like, it reminds me of Harry Potter, when it's like the unassuming girl next door, and then this crazy life that she gets thrown into and has magical powers. I think that horror fans would love it. I think a lot of horror fans maybe do like mystical, fantastical things like Harry Potter. I know I do. So if anyone's in Vancouver and wants to see it, it's Monday, February 7th at the theater at Deer Lake Park.
Okay, be sure to check that out. If there's a ticket link, just let me know and I'll throw it down there. Where can people find you in this online world?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm usually on like once a day. It's a bit of an obsession. I need to stop, but I am on Instagram. It's RamiKahlon. And if you have any questions for me, I get a lot of people that DM me that have seen my film and ask me questions, and I always respond. So please, if you need to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show for our first Plague edition. And I hope that we see more from you. I can't wait to hear about future projects you're writing and directing, acting in, all that.
Thanks so much, Ariel. And thanks for having me. I love talking to you and working with you.
And do you have any parting words for the audience?
Go do what you want to do. Go have fun with whatever genre you like, even if it's musical or horror musical. Like, go do something. You have a vision. Don't care if anyone else isn't doing it or is doing it. Go execute it, because if you like it, we'll like it.
I think that's a great thing to end it on. Have a creepy night out there, people.
Mindy, were you waiting for us? That's so nice.
I can't believe Mindy's even giving Belinda the time of day. There's just something wrong with Belinda.
How was school, sweetheart?
I just meant maybe life after death really isn't that bad.
She looks so serious.
Maybe she brainwashed her.
There's something seriously messed up going on.